Welcome to everyone joining us for Leadership with Purpose.
Oh,
You know, um, in today's episode, we're going to kind of delve into this idea, how putting people first can actually really drive success when we're talking about teams, right?
right.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at this through the lens of this really interesting book, People First Building High Performance Teams.
Yeah, it's a great book. It really kind of challenges some of the traditional ideas we have about leadership, doesn't it? Like the whole command and control thing, it's just not that effective these days.
Yeah, it seems like it's becoming more and more obvious that people really thrive in environments where they feel valued and appreciated.
Exactly.
Like they have a sense of purpose beyond just, clocking in and out.
Absolutely. And that's what this book really digs into, that shift.
Okay, so let's get into it. So the book starts off by emphasizing the importance of, understanding the psychological needs of individuals.
Right.
And it actually mentions some theories like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and this thing called self-determination theory.
Right. Yeah.
So for someone who's maybe not super familiar with those, what's like the key takeaway here in the context of, being an effective leader?
Well, I think the core idea is that, beyond just like basic needs, right? Like getting paid, having a safe workplace, people have these deeper psychological needs that are really crucial to their performance.
Okay.
So, like, one of those is autonomy, right? The need to feel like you have some control over your work.
Or to make some decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Not just being told what to do all the time. Then there's competence, feeling like you're good at what you do and that you're growing and developing.
Makes sense.
And then finally, and maybe most importantly, there's relatedness.
Okay.
That feeling of connection to your colleagues, to the team, and even to the larger purpose of the organization.
Right. Feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And self-determination theory says that when these needs are met, people become intrinsically motivated.
Meaning they're motivated from within, not just by external rewards.
Exactly. So it's not just about bonuses or promotions. It's about that deeper sense of purpose and belonging.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would lead to, more sustainable motivation in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. And that ultimately leads to higher performance, more creativity, more innovation,
Yeah.
more engagement overall.
And probably less turnover, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When people feel valued and connected, they're more likely to stick around.
So how do leaders actually create that kind of environment where these needs are met? The book, it talks a lot about psychological safety and trust.
Yeah, it's really all about trust.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, I think one of the key things is fostering a sense of psychological safety on the team.
Okay, explain that.
So psychological safety basically means that people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, taking risks, even making mistakes, without fear of being judged or punished.
Right, like a no-blame culture, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. A
So
space where everyone feels like they can be themselves and contribute authentically.
that makes sense.
And leaders play a huge role in creating that kind of safety, by being vulnerable themselves, by actively listening, by being empathetic and understanding.
Right, leading by example, essentially.
Exactly. And when people feel safe, that's when real trust starts to build.
Right, because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to be honest, you're not going to be open, you're not going to take risks.
Right, exactly. You're going to hold back. And when people hold back, the whole team suffers.
So I guess that's where emotional intelligence comes in, right? Being able to read the room, understand how your team is feeling, and respond accordingly.
You got it. Emotional intelligence is absolutely essential for building that kind of trusting, supportive environment. Being able to not only understand your own emotions, but also the emotions of others.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Empathy, especially, is so important.
Right, being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and really understand where they're coming from.
Right. And emotionally intelligent leaders are also better at anticipating problems and resolving conflicts. They can kind of sense when things are off and address them before they blow up.
So we've talked about psychological needs, safety, and trust.
Right.
Now let's get into some of the more concrete strategies that the book outlines.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the key ones is empowerment and autonomy,
Right.
giving people more control over their work.
Yeah, exactly. So practically speaking, this might look like delegating more responsibility to team members,
Right.
giving them the authority to make decisions without having to constantly check in with you.
Yeah, trusting them to do their jobs well.
Exactly. And this not only makes people feel more valued and competent, It also makes the team more agile.
More agile. How so?
Well, when decisions can be made quickly without having to go through layers of bureaucracy, the team can respond to changes much faster.
Oh, I see. Like they can adapt more easily to new challenges and opportunities.
Exactly. And that's crucial in today's fast-paced world.
Okay, so empowerment and autonomy. What else?
Another key strategy is investing in the growth and development of your team members.
Right. That seems pretty straightforward, but why is it particularly important within this people-first approach?
Well, it's about showing your team that you're invested in their future, not just their present output. Providing opportunities for training, for mentorship, for career advancement.
Right, helping them build their skills and achieve their goals.
Exactly. And when people feel like they're learning and growing, they're more engaged, more motivated, and more likely to stay with the company.
So it's good for the individual and good for the organization as a whole.
Absolutely. It's a win-win situation.
The book also talks a lot about the importance of recognition and appreciation, which kind of seems like a no-brainer, but I guess it's easy to overlook in the day-to-day hustle.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to just get caught up in the tasks and forget to acknowledge the people doing the work.
Right.
But taking the time to say thank you, to acknowledge achievements, to give specific and genuine praise, it can have a huge impact.
So how do you do that effectively?
It's about being authentic and specific.
Okay.
Not just like a generic good job, but really highlighting what the person did well and why it was valuable.
Oh, okay. So more like, hey, I really appreciated how you handled that difficult client. You stayed so calm and professional, and you really resolved the issue effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Something specific like that that shows you're paying attention and that you genuinely appreciate their effort.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Sometimes just a quick email or a mention in a team meeting can go a long way.
Right. Just acknowledging people's contributions.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of appreciation.
Yeah, I guess that ties into the next point, which is about work-life balance and well-being. It seems like those things have become increasingly important, especially in recent years.
Oh, absolutely. People are realizing that they need to take care of themselves both physically and mentally in order to perform at their best.
And that means having time for things outside of work.
Exactly. Family, friends, hobbies, all the things that make life enjoyable and fulfilling.
So what's the role of a leader in supporting that balance?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that people have lives outside of work and respecting those boundaries.
Right.
It's also about promoting healthy habits, encouraging people to take breaks, to use their vacation time, to not work late all the time.
Yeah, because burnout is a real thing, and it's not good for anyone.
Right. And it can ultimately lead to lower productivity and higher turnover.
Makes sense.
So it's really in everyone's best interest to create a culture that supports well-being.
Another thing the book talks about is building a sense of community within the team.
Yeah, that sense of belonging is so important.
But how can leaders actually do that? It's not like you can just force people to be friends.
Well, it's not about forcing anything. It's about creating opportunities for connection.
Okay.
So this could be anything from organizing team-building activities to simply encouraging informal interactions.
Right, like having lunch together or, just chatting by the coffee machine.
Exactly. And also encouraging people to share their knowledge and experiences with each other.
Right, because that kind of builds trust and rapport.
Exactly. And when people feel connected to each other, they're more likely to collaborate effectively and support each other.
Okay, so community is important. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is absolutely crucial for building high-performing teams.
Absolutely. It's not just about fairness. It's about leveraging the full potential of everyone on the team.
Right, because if you only have people from similar backgrounds and perspectives, you're going to miss out on a lot of great ideas.
Exactly. Diversity brings different perspectives, different experiences, different ways of thinking.
And that leads to more creativity, more innovation, better problem solving.
Exactly. And inclusion is about making sure everyone feels valued and respected and that they have an equal opportunity to contribute.
Right, because if people don't feel like they belong, they're not going to speak up, they're not going to share their ideas, and they're not going to be their best selves.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different strategies for putting people first,
Yeah, we have.
but I'm curious, what kind of tangible impact can organizations actually expect to see when they really embrace this approach?
Well, the research is pretty clear on this.
Okay.
Organizations that prioritize people tend to have higher levels of employee engagement, motivation, and productivity.
Right, because happy employees are productive employees.
Exactly. And they also tend to have lower turnover rates.
So less time and money spent on recruiting and training new people.
Right. Plus, they tend to be more innovative and adaptable because people feel empowered to take risks and try new things.
And I imagine they also have better relationships with their customers.
Absolutely, because when employees are happy and engaged, that translates into better service and a more positive customer experience.
So it's really a virtuous cycle, right? Putting people first leads to better business outcomes, which then reinforces that people-first culture.
Exactly. It's not just about doing the right thing, it's also about doing the smart thing for your business.
Now, I know shifting to a people-first approach isn't always easy. The book talks about some of the challenges, like moving away from those traditional hierarchical structures.
Yeah, that can be a big shift for some organizations.
Right, especially for leaders who are used to being in control and making all the decisions.
Yeah, it requires a different kind of leadership, one that's more about empowering others than directing them.
Right. And I imagine it can also be challenging to balance the needs of individuals with the goals of the organization.
Absolutely. That's a constant balancing act. You want to give people autonomy and flexibility, but you also need to make sure everyone is aligned and working towards the same objectives.
And then there's the whole issue of measuring the impact of a people-first approach.
Yeah, that can be tricky.
Right, because things like trust and engagement, they're not always easy to quantify.
Right. But there are ways to measure it. You can look at things like employee satisfaction surveys, feedback from exit interviews, and even things like absenteeism and turnover rates.
Right, so it's not just about looking at the numbers, it's about really listening to your people and paying attention to the overall vibe of the organization.
Exactly. And being willing to adjust your approach as needed.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Yeah.
It's clear that putting people first is not just a nice to have, it's a must have for any organization that wants to thrive in today's world.
Absolutely. It's the foundation of high performance, innovation, and sustainable success.
So as you think about your own work environment, ask yourself, how effectively are these people-first principles being applied? And what impact might a greater focus on these principles have on your team's dynamics and your overall success? Thanks for joining us for this discussion on leadership with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to like it, subscribe to our channel for more great content, and consider supporting us to help keep these conversations going.